Hello everyone, welcome to my watercolor painting channel. Today we are going to paint a tulip. Over the years I've fallen in love with them and tried to paint them many times. I've got an extra example of this pink tulip that I've done about 6 or 7 years ago, and then two big sets of tulips that I've made earlier this year and a very recent one. So I'm going to show you how to paint it. Just have a look and compare these two tulips that I've done in different times. So I've prepared a sketch, and this tulip is from my garden. So I photographed it, printed the picture out and transfer it onto my good quality watercolor paper. So I'm removing some extra thick graphite marks with my rubber very gently. And on to my next step, we're going to prepare everything we need: watercolor paint, palette, tissue paper, water brushes and a piece of paper. So before we start painting, we will mix some colors. First combination will be for the white parts of the tulip's petals, so I'm using a bit of Payne's Grey, raw umber and lemon yellow hue. And then I'm applying this mixture to my paper to see the result. I'm also adding paint combinations, so if I run out of them, I won't forget what pigments I've used. Second mix is for this burgundy color of the petals. So I've used purple lake, permanent rose, burnt amber and a dash of cobalt blue, or you can also add light red. So my next mixture is for the white part of the petal as well, but it's slightly colder, so I've used Payne's Grey, lemon yellow hue and I added cobalt blue. And there are two final color combinations left for our stem. So for the darker part, I've used sap green, burnt sienna and ultramarine. And for the lighter part that it's on the left side of the stem, I've used cadmium yellow hue, yellow pale and sap green. And after all the mixes, don't forget to change your water. So I am starting on premixing paints for the lighter part of the petals using Payne's Grey, lemon hue and raw amber. Firstly, I apply water to this one petal and then gradually I am adding more and more color. And I am leaving some of the parts white. Also mixing the colors for the colder part of the tulip, which seems to be sort of on top of the flower, and more warmer colors we have at the bottom of the flower, where the white petals look yellowish at the bottom. And at the same time I'm adding slightly greyish colour to refine petals of the tulip, to sort of to show where the shadowy bits, where the shadow lanes of the petals. Also, I like to use different brushes, and I didn't find one brush that ticks all my preferences. So here I'm using Polina Bright's brush, and I really like using it, and it's a great quality product, but it doesn't seem to be working with my technique, how I do lifting the pigment properly. And I do think maybe because it's synthetic, so I'm changing it to a different brush. I think it's a Panart brush, which is made from natural hair, and it seems to be working perfectly with my technique. So the first layer is now dry, so let's add darker color to our petal. So I'm using different palettes as you can see, and it's just a ceramic plate. I used to love different palettes, but now more and more in paint I find it easier to use just one palette without segments to separate my mixtures. So I just use different plates, one for the flower, another for the stem, etc. etc. These dark pink colors I'm using purple lake, permanent rose, a dash of burnt amber and cobalt blue, and but also you can add light red to it. So I premixed this color and I am gradually adding it to the petal, and I'm adding it that way that I am following the line of the petal. So I'm trying to build up a tulip shape, so I'm adding vertical light pink lines with the tip of the brush. So I'm adding more light red, I'm premixing it on my palette, and as you can see on the reference photo, there are the lighter parts of that dark purple color, and so I'm combining them too, moving my brush vertically up and down, looking at my reference at the same time. So I'm applying color, and then with a clean watery brush I dissolve borders, so make them smooth. So it's a combination of applying color and lifting the pigment technique. Let's add another layer to our white part of the tulip. So I'm checking my reference and I'm using Payne's Grey, lemon yellow hue and a dash of cobalt blue. Um, and I'm adding colder mixture first, and while it's still wet I paint it over with yellow color. With this paper, and this is Arches cold press paper, and it's quite thick. I'm using my technique, so I let it dry a little bit but not completely, and whilst it's on a border of drying out but not being 100% dry, I do my final touches of lifting the pigment, and I'm using my brush to do it. So as you can see I use the full of the body of the brush, and then I'm waiting when my petals will be dry 100%. So at this time I'm going to be painting the stem. Let's add more color to the flower. So on the right hand side there is a kind of dirty looking color, but it's just that dark purple showing through the white part of overlapping petal. So I'm using this color to build the shape, and also I'm using darker color on whites, on like lighter parts, and it's given me a great contrast. Do you see that some parts of the petals that remain white, they are really standing out now, and it gives my illustration that lush, that richness look, that vintage look. So with the stem, I use more and more of that green mixtures that we pre-mixed before, and see how I leave space on the right hand side of the stem. I do this on purpose to sort of create a space for reflection, a space for highlighting the fact that my image and the stem isn't flat, it's round, it has a shape, it has volume. So here I'm going through with my super thin brush. I use here a ProArte brush size 007. So I'm leaving the most highlighted areas untouched, and I use a very diluted, so very watery mixture of the colors that we mixed before in the beginning, and I'm kind of going through and I want my brush strokes to overlap the background colors, so you can see brush strokes going over our background color. So I use a bit more paint, and if it's blending together so you can't really see brush strokes, you add a bit more color so you can see it. That's how I use it. It's also very important to look at the reference picture at the same time and study how these little veins of the tulip grow. They are sort of going up from the stem and then to the petal, and then in the petal they are split into two sides. So try to follow nature's guideline. So I do it with my brush strokes. As you can see how I do them, I am creating the shape of the petal, and so you can easily recognize by it that it's a tulip. I am also adding these pink stripes, as you can see on the reference photo too. Again, once it's all dried out, I use a lot of brush strokes to add final colors. It's a very long process, but it gives my illustration an incredible look and plenty of details. So I'm adding this bright pink color, permanent rose here, as well on top of our colors, and with going over the dark parts of the dark sides of the petals, and I'm sort of implementing them gently with a tiny brush stroke, so I just make some sort of gradient with them. And with more and more color, I add to the borders of the petals to sort of refine, to show here's one petal and its shadow, and here's another one. And I'm applying more and more color to sort of the borders to show it. Also with the green color mixture, I'm going over the stem and I even adding some purple-like pigment to the bottom of the flower. I think my painting is now complete and I am very pleased with the result, and it has its sort of vintagey look, so I am very chuffed with this. I hope you enjoyed it, watching it, and I hope you learned something new. Again, I'm here reminding you that I will have new tutorials every week. Full tutorial for this video is available on my Patreon. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions and you would like to ask me about anything regarding this painting, please just leave your comments down below and I will be very happy to answer them. Thank you.